Darkness. Nothing but the faint hum of hospital lights and the rhythmic ticking of a clock echoing through the corridor. A man's voice cuts through the stillness, calm, measured, but laced with something heavy. And there are cases you forget, he says. And there are cases that change who you are. It's 3 a.m. inside St. Agnes Psychiatric Hospital. The night shift moves quietly, nurses patting down the linoleum floors, the smell of disinfectant thick in the air. Behind one locked door, a woman sleeps fitfully beneath the sterile glow of a wall lamp. Every few seconds, her lips twitch, her fingers curl. Her breathing turns uneven. Then, without warning, she gasps. Eyes snapping open, a scream caught in her throat. Dr. Michael Avery reaches her bedside within seconds. He's in his late 40s, salt and pepper hair, the expression of a man who's spent 2 decades studying the human mind, yet still believes in its mysteries. He gently steadies her shoulder. "Evelyn," he murmurs, "you're safe. You're here with me." But Evelyn Harper doesn't seem convinced. Her eyes dart around the room as if searching for something unseen. "It's getting closer," she whispers. "Every time I dream it, it feels more real. The same place. The same time. I see me." Dr. Avery studies her, the tremor in her voice, the way her pupils dilate. He's treated schizophrenia, mania, delusional disorder. He knows how fear can masquerade as prophecy. Still, something about Evelyn's conviction unsettles him. He notes the details carefully. Recurring dream, identical sequence, escalating distress. But when she describes the final image, a clock flashing 3:07 a.m., his pen pauses mid-sentence. In narration, his voice continues. "At first I thought it was symbolic, a cry for help woven into a dream. But she wasn't describing symbolism. She was describing an appointment." The following days blur together. Evelyn refuses to sleep, terrified of closing her eyes. Each time exhaustion wins, she wakes screaming, drenched in sweat, begging the nurses to check the clock. Always that same time, 3:07 a.m. Dr. Avery prescribes mild sedatives, arranges nightly observation. He tells himself she's projecting trauma, a textbook case of predictive anxiety. But as he listens to her recount the dream again and again, something in her tone cuts through his professional distance. "I see lightning," she says softly during one session. "A crash. I'm lying on the ground, and I know I'm gone. But I can still hear the clock. 3:07, every single time." The psychiatrist records her words, his voice steadier than he feels. "And you believe this dream shows your death?" Evelyn nods without hesitation. "Not believe, doctor. I know. That night, he stays late in his office reviewing her file. No substance use, no psychosis, no indication of self-harm. Still, her terror feels absolute, the kind born not from imagination, but from certainty. Through the glass window of the observation room, he watches her sleep. The heart monitor glows faintly beside her bed, its rhythmic beeping a fragile tether between two worlds. Then, at exactly 3:07 a.m., Evelyn bolts upright, a cry tearing from her throat. "It's coming! I saw it again!" The staff rush in. She's shaking, tears streaming, pointing at the clock. Dr. Avery glances at it. 3:07 on the dot. Her words echo through the ward as he tries to calm her. "That's when it happens, doctor. That's when I die." Silence hangs heavy after the outburst. Nurses exchange uneasy glances. Dr. Avery stands frozen, his clinical composure slipping just enough for the camera to catch the faint tremor in his hands. His voice returns in narration, lower now, almost confessional. "I've treated hundreds of patients who believed they were dying, but I'd never met someone who dreamed her own death and seemed to be counting down to it." The lights dim on Evelyn's trembling figure. The steady tick of the wall clock grows louder, filling the space between each heartbeat. And then, everything fades to black. Before the nightmares, Evelyn Harper was the kind of person who lit up a room. Friends described her laugh as the sound of sunlight. She was a kindergarten teacher, the kind who stayed late cutting paper hearts for her students, and kept a jar of candy on her desk for the ones who had hard days. She loved quiet things, gardening, baking, the smell of books. There was no hint of darkness in her life, until 2 years before she met Dr. Avery. In soft narration, Dr. Avery explains, trauma doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it hides, waiting for the mind to fall asleep. Through gentle reconstructions, we see flashes of Evelyn's past. A rainy night, headlights slicing through the dark. A scream, then the crushing sound of metal folding in on itself. Her husband, Daniel, was killed instantly when their car was struck by a truck on a rural highway. Evelyn survived, with minor injuries, but major scars no X-ray could reveal. For months after the accident, she couldn't sleep. The first dreams were simple, flashes of lightning, the squeal of tires. But as time passed, they deepened, turning into vivid sequences where she saw herself dying in the same storm that took Daniel. The details were painfully specific. The color of the sky, the taste of rain, the feeling of her pulse slowing in her chest. Dr. Avery, in voiceover, walks the audience through the possibilities. "We see cases like this after traumatic loss," he says. They can stem from post-traumatic stress, or what we call parasomnia associated with trauma, a condition where the brain relives overwhelming events during REM sleep. He speaks carefully, as though reminding himself of science while standing at the edge of something that doesn't fit. To illustrate, the film cuts between clinical imagery, brain scans lighting up in patterns, and Evelyn sitting across from him in a small therapy room, her voice barely a whisper. These aren't dreams, she tells him. They're warnings. Her medical tests reveal anomalies. During sleep, her EEG readings show unusual bursts of activity in the temporal lobes, the part of the brain linked to memory, emotion, and sensory hallucination. It could explain the realism of her dreams, but not their precision, not the timestamp that never changed. By the third week of her hospitalization, Evelyn's exhaustion shows. She stops eating. Her hair dulls. Dark circles bloom under her eyes. Every time I close them, she says, it's waiting for me. The same storm. At the same time, Dr. Avery tries to reassure her. He tells her that dreams often borrow symbols from trauma, that her mind may be staging her fear of death to help her process it. She listens, but her gaze is distant, as if she's already peering into that other place. In his narration, we hear him struggle to reconcile what he's witnessing. There was something about her eyes, he says quietly. Something the scans couldn't explain, as if part of her already knew she wasn't long for this world. The section closes with Evelyn standing at her hospital window one night, watching rain streak down the glass. Lightning flashes, and for an instant, her reflection blurs with the storm outside. She presses her hand to the window and whispers, "It's coming." Dr. Avery's voice fades in again, almost inaudible. I told myself it was grief, but grief doesn't predict the hour of your death. The sound of distant thunder rolls into silence. By the fourth week of Evelyn's stay, the dreams had transformed from a torment into a pattern, an equation with a single terrifying answer. Every time she woke, she would describe the same sequence in perfect detail. The storm, the flash of headlights, her own voice calling out, and then a clock, a digital clock flickering 3:07 a.m. like a dying heartbeat. She began to insist that this wasn't symbolic or random. It was a countdown. Dr. Avery initially treated it as obsessive fixation, a coping mechanism for unresolved trauma, but as the days passed, her conviction became impossible to ignore. "It's not a metaphor," she told him one morning, her voice trembling but steady. "It's an appointment. March 19th, 3:07 a.m. That's when I go." He remembers staring at her, trying to calculate how to respond without feeding into the delusion. "Evelyn, you're safe here," he told her. "Dreams can't hurt you." But even as he said it, part of him didn't believe his own words. To ensure her safety, Dr. Avery arranged for around-the-clock monitoring. Tiny cameras were installed in her hospital room. A sleep technician was assigned to watch her EEG readings each night. She agreed to the surveillance, saying only, "I just don't want to die alone." The nights became rituals of dread. Nurses recalled how Evelyn would clutch her blanket, eyes fixed on the wall clock, whispering, "He's waiting for me," before finally surrendering to sleep. One technician remembered her pulse spiking seconds before she entered REM, as though her body anticipated something her mind already knew. Dr. Avery's voice returns in narration, lower now, more uncertain. "I kept telling myself it was the manifestation of grief, that the subconscious was rehearsing the moment of loss. But I couldn't ignore the pattern. How her dreams, her physical responses, even her vital signs seemed synchronized with that same unrelenting time." Then came the night that would mark the first crack in science's calm surface. Evelyn drifted into REM sleep, her breathing rhythmic at first, but within minutes her body began to tremble. Her heart monitor spiked erratically. Nurses rushed to the monitors as her EEG erupted in chaotic waves, and then flatlined. For 3 full seconds the line was dead. No electrical activity, no heartbeat. Just as panic set in, the beeping resumed. Her body jolted, a deep gasp tearing from her lungs. The EEG stabilized. She opened her eyes, wide, terrified, and whispered, "Not yet?" The staff exchanged anxious looks. When Dr. Avery arrived, she grabbed his hand with surprising strength. "He was there again," she said. "Daniel. He said he's coming for me on March 19th at 3:07. In his narration, Avery confesses, "I'd studied every theory about the human mind, but none prepared me for watching a dream almost stop a heart." The section ends on a close-up image of the calendar beside Evelyn's bed. The date March 19th is circled in red, the ink bleeding through the paper like a wound that won't close. The clock beside it ticks, each second heavier than the last. In the weeks leading up to March 19th, Dr. Avery became a man obsessed. The line between professional duty and personal fixation blurred until he could no longer tell where one ended and the other began. He spent long nights hunched over Evelyn's charts, watching the footage of her sleep on repeat, searching for some hidden clue science might have overlooked. Every anomaly, every spike in her EEG, every flicker of movement was catalogued, studied, questioned. Yet the answer remained just out of reach, as if the truth itself refused to be measured. His narration grows heavy. Psychiatry teaches you to find meaning in patterns, but not to believe in prophecy. And still, I couldn't ignore the feeling that something extraordinary was happening, something our textbooks didn't prepare us for. We see him sitting across from specialists, neurologists, sleep researchers, even a parapsychologist from the university, who hesitated before saying, "If she's seeing the same dream, with exact repetition and timestamps, you might be dealing with precognition." Avery recoiled at the suggestion. He was a man of science, yet deep down, he couldn't dismiss it entirely. The camera pans across MRI scans glowing in the dim light of his office, each one revealing a burst of activity in Evelyn's temporal lobe during REM sleep. A neuroscientist explains that this part of the brain often fires during déjà vu or spiritual visions, moments where memory and perception collide. It's possible, the scientist says, that her brain is replaying trauma in a loop with increasing clarity. It's like a film reel stuck on the same frame. But Avery isn't satisfied. If that were true, he argues in narration, why was the timing so exact? Why did her body respond as though it believed the dream was real? Intercut are emotional interviews with Evelyn's family. Her sister, tearful, recalls how Evelyn would wake from naps, screaming, "Don't put me in the morgue!" Her mother remembers begging the doctors to sedate her daughter. Just let her rest. Let her stop seeing it. Their grief is raw, tangled with helplessness. Through all this, Evelyn herself grows quieter. She no longer fights the dreams. She simply waits. "It's like I'm walking towards something I can't avoid," she tells Dr. Avery during one session. "I used to be afraid of dying. Now I'm afraid of knowing when it's going to happen." Her words shake him. For the first time in his career, he feels his own belief system trembling. He spends sleepless nights staring at her video feed, a cup of cold coffee forgotten beside him. Outside, rain taps softly against the window, the same sound that fills her dreams. Then, one night, as thunder rolls across the city, Evelyn suddenly sits upright in bed. The movement is sharp, deliberate, her eyes open, wide, unblinking, and she stares directly into the surveillance camera. Her lips move, barely a whisper, but the microphone catches the words clearly. It's almost time. Dr. Avery watches in frozen silence, the glow of the monitor casting ghostly light across his face. The rain outside grows heavier, each drop like a ticking second hand counting down to something inevitable. His voice, in narration, drops to a whisper. In medicine, we tell ourselves there's always an explanation, but sometimes there isn't. The screen fades to black, leaving only the faint sound of the clock. The night that would haunt Dr. Michael Avery for the rest of his life began like any other, quiet, routine, unremarkable. Outside, the city slept beneath a low ceiling of thunderclouds. Inside St. Agnes Hospital, the air hung thick with anticipation. Nurses moved in near silence, each one aware that this was the night, the one Evelyn Harper had been warning them about for weeks. The clock in the nurses' station read 2:57 a.m. Evelyn had been asleep for just over an hour, her vitals steady. Rain lashed against the windows, rhythmic and cold. Dr. Avery sat in his office across the hall, staring at her sleep logs spread across his desk. He'd told himself he would go home earlier, but he couldn't bring himself to leave. Not tonight. In his narration, his voice trembles ever so slightly. Every part of me wanted to dismiss it as coincidence, but deep down, I was waiting to see if the human mind could really predict its own end. He flips through her dream notes one last time. Every entry, every phrase, leads to the same line written in trembling handwriting. March 19th, 3:07 a.m. He looks up at the clock. 2 minutes until 3. The rain intensifies. The lights in the hallway flicker. On the monitor before him, Evelyn lies still, her chest rising and falling in even rhythm. The heart monitor beside her bed beeps softly. Then, at 3:03 a.m., a sudden spike. An alarm sounds. A nurse's voice crackles through the intercom. "Dr. Avery, you should see this." He rushes down the corridor, shoes echoing against the tile. In the dim light of the observation room, Evelyn's body jerks violently. Her heart rate climbs, 130, 140, 160. She gasps, whispering a single word, "Daniel." Then her breathing stops. The monitor flatlines at 3:07 a.m. exactly. For a moment, the room stands still. The rain outside sounds like static. Then chaos erupts. Nurses rush in, performing CPR. Dr. Avery's voice cuts through the noise, measured, commanding, desperate. "Push 1 milligram epinephrine. Now, 30 seconds. No response. 60 seconds, nothing. 90 seconds. The rhythm is gone. Come on, Evelyn, breathe. At 2 minutes, 13 seconds, her body jolts under the defibrillator's shock. A faint pulse returns. Her chest rises. A thin cry escapes her lips. The tension breaks, but it doesn't fade. Evelyn begins to sob, trembling uncontrollably. Between gasps, she murmurs, "He tried to take me." Dr. Avery crouches beside her bed, his voice breaking its usual composure. "You're safe, Evelyn. You're here." She looks up at him through tear-filled eyes. "You don't understand," she whispers. It was him, Daniel. He said it wasn't my time yet. For a long moment, no one speaks. Only the storm outside answers. Dr. Avery steps back, staring at the monitors, still showing unstable readings. He's seen cardiac arrest, seizures, panic attacks, but never this. A patient who predicted her death to the minute, then returned from it. His voice returns, in narration, lower now, almost reverent. For 20 years, I trusted biology. I believed that what ends us is measurable. Oxygen levels, neurons, heartbeats. But that night, watching Evelyn die at the exact time she foresaw, I realized there are things the mind might know long before the body does. As the team stabilizes her, dawn begins to creep over the city skyline. The rain slows. In her room, Evelyn lies still, eyes open, staring at the ceiling. The clock on the wall reads 3:24 a.m. Dr. Avery stands beside her bed, utterly changed. He whispers softly as though speaking to himself. I don't know if she saw death, or if death saw her first. The camera lingers on the faint glow of the heart monitor, one slow, steady beep at a time, before the screen fades to black. In the days that followed, the hospital returned to its routine rhythms. Charts filed, machines checked, beds changed, yet an uneasy quiet lingered. For those who had been there that night, something fundamental had shifted. Evelyn Harper was alive, but she was not the same. Neither was Dr. Michael Avery. She remained under observation for a week, her body physically stable, but her spirit hollowed out. Nurses described her as present but absent, a woman whose eyes seemed fixed on a distance no one else could see. She slept only under heavy sedation, and when she did, her dreams were blank. No storms, no visions, just nothingness. Dr. Avery narrates softly, I told myself I should have felt relief. The crisis had passed. She had survived. But instead, I felt a kind of dread I'd never known before. The dread of realizing that survival might not mean safety. The medical board demanded explanations. Reports were written. Data was analyzed. Every chart, every second of footage was dissected. The consensus was clinical, detached, almost comfortable in its uncertainty. A cardiologist suggested psychogenic arrhythmia, that Evelyn's belief in her impending death was so absolute, her brain triggered a real cardiac arrest. A neurologist blamed temporal lobe hyperactivity, a surge of electrical misfiring mimicking death. Theories layered upon theories, but none could explain how she knew the exact time. In his narration, Dr. Avery admits, science offered me answers that sounded right, but felt wrong, as if logic was patching over something it couldn't truly touch. A week later, Evelyn requested to leave the hospital. When Dr. Avery asked why, she smiled faintly, the first time in weeks, and said, because whatever that was, it's done. I died that night, doctor. What's left of me is just what's needed to finish living. He didn't know how to respond. He simply nodded, signed the discharge papers, and watched her walk down the corridor, a small suitcase in hand, her hospital gown replaced by a pale gray coat. Rain fell lightly outside, just enough to blur her outline as she disappeared beyond the sliding doors. Months passed. Life at St. Agnes moved on. New patients arrived. New cases demanded attention. But Evelyn's file never left Dr. Avery's desk. He kept the sleep recordings, the EEG data, the video of that night, though he could never bring himself to watch it again. Her final words replayed in his mind, haunting him through every quiet evening. Maybe I died that night. In narration, his tone turns reflective, almost fragile. We like to think we can separate mind from body, dream from death. But maybe they're all parts of the same mystery. Maybe the mind doesn't just end when the heart does. Maybe it just changes rooms. The camera lingers on the flicker of a monitor in an empty hospital room, the same one that once held Evelyn Harper. The clock on the wall ticks softly, 3:07 a.m., before fading to black. Years have passed since the night Evelyn Harper died and came back. The world outside has moved on, but inside the quiet halls of St. Agnes Hospital, one office remains exactly the same. Books line the shelves in neat, untouched rows. A desk lamp burns low, its light spilling across a folder worn from years of opening and closing. On the cover, a name written in fading ink, E. Harper. Dr. Michael Avery sits behind the desk, his hair grayer now, his voice slower, softer, the tone of a man who's spent a lifetime thinking about a single question. Every doctor, he says, has that one case that never leaves them. Evelyn was mine. He gazes at her file, his fingers tracing the edges of old notes. I used to believe that consciousness was just the noise of neurons, a flicker that ends when the body does. But I watched something in that room that didn't belong to medicine. I saw a woman meet death on time as promised, and then return from it. In a montage of dimly lit corridors, we see him walking slowly through the ward at night. The fluorescent lights hum overhead. Empty beds line the hallway, silent except for the faint, steady beeping of a distant monitor. His footsteps echo, each one a reminder that some questions don't fade. They echo. I've been asked if I think she predicted her death, he continues. Maybe she did, or maybe her mind created it. A prophecy fulfilled by belief alone. But part of me wonders if the mind isn't just a passenger in the body. Maybe it's a compass, something that points beyond us, even when we don't understand where it's leading. The narration grows more intimate now, almost as if he's speaking directly to the viewer. We are trained to search for proof, for things we can measure. But proof doesn't comfort you at 3 a.m. when you're staring at a monitor waiting for a heartbeat that shouldn't have returned. He opens the folder one last time. Inside is a single page, Evelyn's handwriting from her therapy journal. If dreams are messages, then maybe dying is just waking up somewhere else. Dr. Avery closes his eyes. The silence stretches. The hum of the hospital fades until all that remains is the soft ticking of a wall clock. The camera drifts through the empty psychiatric ward, settling at the door to Evelyn's old room. The bed is neatly made, the machines unplugged. On the wall above the headboard, still taped after all these years, is the old calendar page, March 19th. The red circle has faded to a faint pink halo, but it remains, unmoved, waiting. Dr. Avery's voice returns for the final time, calm but heavy with the weight of wonder. There are things medicine can heal and things it can't. There are mysteries we're not meant to solve, only to witness. Evelyn's dream was one of them, a message from somewhere none of us can chart. He pauses, just long enough for the silence to ache. If dreams are messages, he whispers, then hers was the one I was never meant to forget. The screen fades to black. The ticking stops.